Welcome to a very special Christmas edition of the Racing News Show. Never done a two-up on this before, but I thought I'd rope in Si for what is the final one of 2020.
Yeah, it's been a strange year for us all, hasn't it? A challenging one in which we've all, at some point or another, faced some very tough moments. It's just been a weird one, hasn't it? And no less so in professional cycling, which is weird enough at the best of times.
It is, yeah. So it seemed apt, really, that in our final show of the year, we take a look back at some of the stranger moments that have defined this racing season. The start of the year back in Australia feels like a different decade, really, but I assure you that it was actually this year, and looking back in hindsight, it was the first glimpse of the fact that 2020 might not quite go to plan.
No, because for starters, Richie Porte was beaten up Willunga Hill at the Tour Down Under. He'd had 6 straight wins in a row there, but that winning streak was brought to an end by neo-pro Matt Holmes. We should have seen it all coming then, really, shouldn't we? The stars had been thrown off course. This was going to be a year like no other.
Fair play to Matt Holmes, though. That was a brilliant win. And Richie Porte did take the overall classification for the second time in his career. Now, unfortunately, it didn't take too long for COVID to grip the world from that point. And in the space of a few weeks, most races have been cancelled and lockdowns took hold around the world in March. Of course, in true GCN fashion, we actually made a video which was entitled How to Watch a Pro Bike Race, which we released about 2 weeks before there were no bike races left to watch.
Yeah, so we would like to take this time to apologise for that dreadful timing and our part in the global pandemic. The UAE Tour was where pro cycling initially clashed head-on with the challenges that the pandemic would pose. The race went from shortened to rumours of cancellation to a full-on rider/staff/team lockdown with some of the sport's top pros confined to their hotel rooms for a number of weeks.
Horrific, the thought of that, isn't it? Obviously, many of them were worried about the fact that they would lose their form for the big European races, so home trainers were shipped out to help them. But of course, it didn't really matter in the end because all the races in Europe would soon follow suit and be cancelled too. Raymond Sinkeldam and Arnaud Demar emerged as a dynamic pairing throughout this stint at the Crown Plaza on Yas Island with a variety of, quite sure how to say this, eccentric uploads, you say, to social media.
Yes, PlayStations were smuggled in, hotel corridor Olympics took place, and there was the case of French rider Bruno Ameret quarantined in a disused hospital on suspicion of carrying COVID. The FDJ ruler repeatedly tested negative, but was kept over for 4 days in isolation. Then he was randomly let go without any explanation from this disused hospital, made his way back to the Rose Hotel on foot, only to be barred entry because in his shorts and t-shirt there was nothing left to do but try and get home. So he boarded a plane without any luggage and flew home to Po, somewhat in a daze, as you might imagine. So just your usual week away racing. I wonder if the UAE Tour is going to be on his schedule for 2021.
Well, it seemed bizarre at the time, that story, but it seemed quite normal now, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, true.
From there, riders' behaviour did start to make us wonder over the following few months. Sam Bewley, one of the key suspects in this regard, broadcasting what is quite possibly the strangest set of videos we've ever seen.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is Sam's usual persona or whether he just went a little bit doolally in isolation on his own, but regardless, it was quite entertaining.
We normally use mango for this dish, but I couldn't find any mango. COVID-19, times are tough. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try a bit of pineapple. A no you have, a yes you can get. So let's give it a nudge. Another thing here, beautifully sliced avocado. If you're a millennial, you might want to crush that up, add a bit of feta, charge yourself $30. But anyway, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep it whole. I'm gonna chuck it all together, make a beautiful little dish. Let's see how she goes.
Now, during lockdown, pro riders embraced the time off in a variety of ways. Everesting was the challenge of choice, it seemed, and pro riders went for it hammer and tongs. But the very rules of Everesting were uncovered as slightly bizarre, as Lachlan Morton broke the record at one point, only to be disqualified for erroneous elevation data.
Yes, our very own Hank didn't take the record, but he did have a go. Although he seemingly got that slightly wrong because he went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench as opposed to the top of Everest. Or maybe he was on the right track with that one because the height of Everest has actually grown apparently, so maybe all those records are null and void.
Yeah, 36 centimetres I think.
Yeah, technically all rides are a bit short really in their record settings this year.
That's right, something Connor has never had a problem with. Anyway, some even took to virtual Everesting attempts and challenges, everyone except Mikel Landa of course, who cracked completely with his trainer. And it was at this point in the year that races began to be reshuffled and rescheduled, which gave rise to probably the weirder moments of the season, like the Tour of Flanders in October, the Vuelta a España in November, and the Tour de France kicking off the season of Grand Tours.
Well, we hoped it did, and I think we were all relieved to see that it actually did, and we had a Tour de France take place in August, which did not disappoint us. Of course, it culminated with that dramatic final time trial up the Planche de Belfi, where Tadej Pogačar stormed round to take the yellow jersey. But then it was Roglic's time trial helmet that really stole the show that day. I mean, Tour victory slipped from his grasp. What rider in their right mind uses a brand new, never used before time trial helmet on the most important time trial of their entire career? Didn't really work out for him, did it?
It didn't really, did it? Twitter exploded. There were lots of memes and jokes, lots and lots of jokes. In fact, I hope that helmet had a thick skin because, Roglic himself even got in on some of the action. The Tour also provided us with some bizarre team tactics, most notably Astana's decision to light up the descent on stage 1, contravening the peloton's decision to neutralise affairs, only to see their team leader Lopez crash headfirst into a lamppost, which is slightly awkward.
Thankfully he was alright, although he did then crash out on the first day of the Giro, didn't he? Women's racing didn't escape the bizarrities either. I mean, look at Van Vleuten. She took the start line of her 6th race of the season and only finished 2nd, which was bizarre at the time because she'd won the previous 5 she'd done. Quite incredible, her season, as it was too for Anna van der Breggen, should I say.
Yes, Van Vleuten featured in other weird moments of the women's season too. Who remembers her attacking in Flanders, bridging to Van der Breggen, who then wouldn't cooperate? So the two of them then freewheeled, laughing, until they got caught.
It was a strange moment, wasn't it?
Very strange moment.
But maybe good tactics by Van der Breggen because her teammate Chantal van den Broek-Black ended up winning.
True.
Sam Bennett provided another slightly bizarre moment after his first Tour de France stage win in this year's edition, with a close finish, and at the end, the sprinter wasn't sure whether he'd won or not. And because of the increased security, etc., at the finish, he was kind of on his own, wondering whether or not he'd just won his first ever Tour de France stage. And it left us with, dare I say it, a few awkward moments actually after the finish line at the Tour de France, with riders all on their own, seemingly not knowing what to do with themselves.
Celebrating by yourself, it's not cool, is it? There were, of course, many more moments, not forgetting Jens de Boucheret missing the time cut of the Tour de France after helping his teammate Brian Cockard actually make the cuts, which is the ultimate, isn't it? You slave your way through an entire stage of the Tour, drop back for your team sprinter, get him through the stage, only to get booted out yourself. Gutting.
Selfless.
I wonder if Cockard sent him a postcard from Paris.
Sure, he's got a good Christmas present from Cockard
Surely.
In the post if he hasn't received it already. Our favourite weird event to come out of the Tour de France, however, was the fact that it was won for the first time ever on a Colnago bike. Or perhaps it's even more bizarre, the fact that a Colnago bike had never won the Tour de France before this year.
They've won everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Giro d'Italia came around a few weeks later, of course coming after the Tour and not before the Tour. And the big talk pre-race was about ducks. EF Pro Cycling, of course, came to the race with their one-off jerseys designed by skateboard fashion brand Palace, featuring a duck as central to the design. The new race kit caused quite a stir, so much so that the UCI gave all team members and the director sportif a hefty fine.
One of the best moments of the season for me, that.
What?
Cycling was almost cool. I mean, they were going for hundreds of dollars on eBay, weren't they? The race itself, though, started on a downhill, which was a bit of a recipe for disaster. A few riders came to grief, amongst them Victor Campenaerts, one of the big favourites. Add in some high winds after that descent, and it made it even more treacherous. Rowan Dennis almost blown off his bike. In fact, he was just holding the sidebars for grim death that day.
Oh my word. Now later we had Jai Hindley seemingly wrestling with his rain jacket as he hit the final slopes of the Stelvio, but the Giro seemed to never end.
Well, RCS did well in the end, didn't they? Because it did reach its conclusion in Milan, and what a thrilling finale, as you said.
Yeah.
And what about Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which took place during the Giro? I mean, the finish of that one was quite weird, wasn't it? Alaphilippe looked set to breeze it and take his first win in the rainbow jersey, but not only did he swerve across the road, he celebrated too early, and so Primož Roglic grabbed the victory, and Alaphilippe was later relegated for an incident which he later apologised for.
Yes.
The following week at Brabantse Pijl, he did exactly the same thing, but he did get away with it on that occasion, took the win from Mathieu van der Poel.
Just. Now, skiing seems to emerge as the sport of choice in 2020 if you want to turn pro, not least Anton Poulter, the newest member of the pro peloton to come from a skiing background, although Primož Roglic, of course, ex-ski jumper, always the skiing cyclist of the year. at the moment at least.
Well, he was this year, certainly. One of the weirder events on the women's side of things was the demise of the Paul Ricard professional team. At the beginning of the year, their team lost both title sponsors, Bigler and Katusha. Paul Ricard then stepped in to save the day, much to the delight of all of us as cycling fans. But then it emerged that they failed to pay the team in July, August, September, and then October, which seemed utterly bizarre. There's no explanation. But then the company went into liquidation, so I guess we all knew the reason at that point.
Yeah. Now beyond that, we had Tim Merlier going into the off-season with a rather squeaky voice after this incident at the Trigads de Pana. Mikel Nieve and his group having to dodge some ponies at La Vuelta. The whole bunch successfully navigating around a dog at the Giro. And then here, to make us all feel a little bit better about ourselves, we saw some pro riders walking up the Muur van Gerardsbergen at the Eneco Tour.
Always makes you feel better, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
We had pros instructing motorbike riders how to navigate around the peloton unsuccessfully. Mark Cavendish shouting and then having to literally jump on a neutral service bike that was 2 sizes too big, and hail so big at the Criterium du Dauphiné in August of all months that riders' backs resembled a golf ball.
That was brutal, wasn't it? Now, of course, the weirdest thing about the whole of 2020 is that most races were won on rim brakes.
Wow.
Yes, how can that be possible? Rim brakes, I ask you.
Well, maybe disc brakes just slow you down, Si.
But
right, let us know in the comments if you can think of anything else from previous years that might have topped this 2020 season. I don't think you're going to be able to. Nothing's going to top 2020 for a whole host of reasons, is it?
Well, I hope not, mate, because if it gets worse, that'll be a nightmare. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let's hope that 2021 is a little bit more ordinary, not least so that we can actually enjoy watching racing for longer rather than just cram it all into the same spot.
Without a big break in the middle.
Yeah. Well, without a big break in the middle and without having to watch like 8 races on the same day.
Well, yeah, so we can appreciate them all a bit more.
Exactly.
And fingers crossed for a women's Paris-Roubaix in 2021.
Yes, please.
I can't wait for the new season to start, and we're going to be covering as much as we possibly can over on our new race pass. Feels like we launched that ages ago, but it was only at the end of July, believe it or not. But bigger and better things to come on that side of things in 2021. Stay tuned for them. Have a great new year. We'll see you then.